What's up, you guys? Carlos Toro here, lead boxing writer of Fightful MMA, FightfulBoxing.com, here to give you a quick recap of all the big fights that's happened this past weekend. On Friday on ESPN, Maurice Hooker recovers from an early knockdown to stop Alex Salcedo to retain the WBO junior welterweight title. That fight was the only televised fight on ESPN. It aired at midnight Eastern for those of you on the East Coast. The fight happened after an NBA game. Top Rank was trying to see if they can try to get a good audience coming from an NBA game, but was still a late start to a fight like this. But regardless, Maurice Hooker came out on top. He is now 2 for 2 in world title fights on his opponent's backyard after a comeback win over Alex Salcedo. In the main event of the Top Rank card televised on ESPN, Hooker retained his WBO 140-pound title by stopping Salcedo in Oklahoma City, Salcedo's hometown, in the 7th round. It was Hooker's first world title defense since defeating Terry Flanagan in Flanagan's home country of England to win the then vacant title earlier this year. The title was previously held by Terence Crawford, but he vacated the title so he can challenge for a welterweight title, which he eventually did and won. The fight delivered on its high-action potential as the two boxers combined for more than 170 total punches thrown in the first round. Hooker really wanted to get the jab going early on. Salcedo's power was evident from the start. Both guys did not use the first round to feel each other out, look to see how their range looks. They just went at it. This was a really, really fun fight. Salcedo knocked down Hooker in the second round, and some people thought that this could be potentially the start of the end of Hooker's reign, which hasn't even reached half a year yet. But despite the knockdown, Hooker quickly bounced back and even stunned Salcedo at the end of the round. Hooker would utilize the jab and use his range and mobility to further keep Salcedo from not landing his power punches. He really outboxed him, outclassed him for pretty much the rest of the fight from the third round onwards, except for maybe the fifth round where Salcedo managed to get a few power punches in, but it didn't hurt Hooker too much. Hooker would keep landing the 1-2 as Salcedo couldn't defend well against the champion's reach, and Hooker would even get his own knockdown in the 7th round when he landed a right hand that almost sent Salcedo to the canvas. However, Salcedo used the ropes as leverage and allowed himself to keep himself up. That is not allowed, and so the referee called it a technical knockdown. But, however, Hooker was still relentless and just continued attacking Alex Salcedo, and the fight had to be quickly stopped. Salcedo looked out of breath. He did not look like he was able to put up much of a challenge and probably was going to get knocked down, maybe knocked out, if the fight hadn't been stopped by the referee. Initially, the fight was a tough one for Hooker, but he did deliver on a knockout prediction when he recently spoke to Fightful. He said that Salcedo did not have any defense. He was a guy that was going to come towards him, and that was a style that Hooker really, really liked because he didn't have to come towards him. The fight was going to come to him, and would use his reach advantage to really deliver a strong performance. There were nearly 1,000 punches thrown in the fight, which is an impressive number for it being only 6.5 rounds. After the fight, Maurice Hooker and WBC junior welterweight champion Jose Ramirez briefly exchanged words in the ring. There was no trash talk, but there was some respect between the two, and Hooker even challenged Ramirez to fight on the zone in a unification bout because Hooker initially signed with Matchroom Boxing, or at least a co-promotional deal, so that his fight against Salcedo would be on the zone. However, Hooker and Salcedo could not come to an agreement in terms of negotiating the fight contract. The fight went to a purse bid. Top Rank won that purse bid, meaning that the fight landed on ESPN and not the zone. So now that's going to be, so that was Friday. Saturday was a big card in Kansas City as Jarrell Miller got his second knockout victory in just as many months. He knocked out Bogdan Dinu And the main event of a Matchroom Boxing USA card in Kansas, he scored a knockdown in the 4th round before ultimately knocking out Bognandinho within just seconds remaining in the round, less than 20 seconds in the 4th round. It was a short fight, but it was a fun fight as Dinho actually started out pretty well, outboxing Jarrell Miller and even landing the 1-2 upstairs. Miller was not able to find anything to really hurt Bognandinho, but even so, the few chances that Miller did manage to land on Bognandinho, Dinho was pretty cautious. He was very, very respectful of Miller's power with good reason. Miller is one of the sport's most underrated knockout artists at heavyweight, and he is a big fellow at more than 300 pounds. Miller eventually figured out Dinho's game plan and would go on to stop him in the 4th round. The first knockdown actually came earlier, about midway through the 4th round, a little later, about a minute left. He landed a combination that ended with a left hook to the side of Dinho's head and knocked him down. Dinho was slow to get up and was nearly counted out, but managed to got up at around 9.5, was almost counted out right then and there. But Miller would take the opportunity to quickly go out on the offensive once again and would land another combination of punches, this time ending with a right hook upstairs, and Dinho was promptly knocked out. Miller now improves to 23-0-1, and he's now looking to fight a British heavyweight, whether it be Derek Chisora, Dillian White, Anthony Joshua, or David Price. Lots of big names at heavyweight coming from the UK, and Miller wants to fight all of those guys. Lots of the British heavyweights are with Matchroom Boxing, who Miller is now fighting on. He does not have an exclusive promotional contract, but Miller just one of several fighters who signed at least co-promotional deals so that he can fight on the zone. And Miller is just right up there in terms of the heavyweight elite. He's pretty much on the verge of challenging for a world title, or at least in position to claim to fight for a world title. This is Miller's second victory in as many months. He knocked out Thomas Adamek in the 2nd round back on October 6th on another Matchroom Boxing USA card. So really, Miller is at the point where he's ready to challenge a big heavyweight such as a Dillian White or a Luis Ortiz or even an Anthony Joshua. So we shall see about that. Miller's will probably not fight for the remainder of 2018 and get back in action in early 2019. And lastly, in the co-main event of that same Matchroom Boxing card that was on the zone, Claressa Shields retains her unified WBA and IBF women's middleweight titles and becomes the WBC champion by scoring a wide unanimous decision victory over Hannah Rankin, winning 190 on all 3 scorecards. The WBC title was vacant as previous champion Christina Hammer came down with medical problems that prevented her from fighting Claressa Shields in a fight that would have crowned the next undisputed women's boxing champion. And so the WBC put Rankin as champion in recess, meaning she is a champion, but she is unable to defend her title one way or another. So the title is now vacant. It was then vacant, and now Shields picked up the world title with a dominant victory. Shields was aggressive, used her jab and right hook to control the action. Rankin was able to pretty much take everything Shields threw at her, but wasn't able to really push Shields around. Shields was the more aggressive and accurate puncher in the fight, landing 136 out for 457 punches, good for 30%, while Rankin managed to land just 75 of her 385 punches. As I mentioned, Shields was supposed to fight Christina Hammer in the main event of a Showtime televised card in Atlantic City, but with that fight not happening due to Hammer's medical condition, Claressa Shields moved on to fight on the DAZN card to defend her titles and now become a 3-belt holder at 160 pounds, which now makes way for a potential undisputed title fight between her and Christina Hammer for 2019. That is a really, really good fight. And one of the better women's boxing fights that you can ask for today. So that about wraps it up. What do you think of all these boxing results? Do you believe Maurice Hooker is one of the best fighters at 140 pounds? Do you want to see Jose Ramirez take on Maurice Hooker? What about Jarrell Miller? Do you believe that he's ready for an Anthony Joshua or a Deontay Wilder or a Dillian White? And who do you have winning in a fight between Claressa Shields and Christina Hammer to decide the undisputed women's middleweight champion? Carlos Toro here, FightfulBoxing.com. We're out.